Welcome to The Longer Game. If you're listening to a show about retail being reimagined. If you'd like to connect with The Longer Game, look for The Longer Game at thelongergame.com and on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at The Longer Game. We're here to talk about retail, why it's changing, how it's changing, and what you can expect in the future. We're not trying to take ourselves too seriously, but we do want to know what that retail landscape is going to look like. I hope you enjoy your time listening to this podcast. We try to keep it as quick as possible because we don't want to waste your time, but we want to keep you informed. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's the show. All right, everybody, welcome to the Longer Game podcast where we talk about retail. I believe one of the taglines is Retail Reimagined, and we talk about the future of retail. So we know what retail looks like now. It's changing. E-commerce is becoming a larger part of it. And we like to talk with a variety of guests. And today we have on our podcast, I almost said Elizabeth Jungler, which would not be correct, but it would have been close. But Elizabeth Green, the co-founder of Jungler, which is an advertising agency. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll let Elizabeth give you a little bit more in-depth about herself, her company, what she does. Thanks for joining us, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And we ended up with some technical difficulties this time around too, but gonna power through.
We made it work. We got it figured out. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so hi, my name is Elizabeth Green. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon advertising agency. So we're sticking to our lane at this point, just in the Amazon realm of things. But definitely, digging into all things products and advertising, because I recognize although our lever we pull is Amazon, there's so much outside of that we definitely need to keep an eye on.
So, talking about staying in your lane, I couldn't agree with that more. My agency, Cartology, which is really customized full-scale management of the entire channel. You and I have even referred some people back and forth to each other, which is cool that we're able to leverage each other and say, hey, I don't think this person needs my help, or I think this person more needs your help. But I noticed when I set goals for 2021, I think I went a little too broad, and I wanted to connect across all these channels, and we're not a huge organization like Havas Media or Wonderman, Thompson, or whatever all the other big media companies are. And so this year, when I looked at goals, I said, hey, how can we get deeper into Amazon and provide more services around Amazon? And I think that's what is helping us to be successful so far this year, just kind of doubling down on what we know. And we know that Amazon is a growing percent of retail in general, but also e-commerce. I think it's now 39.7%. When I go back and of e-commerce retail, I think ended the year at about 16, and the biggest jump we saw in 2020. It ended the year at 16% in 2020. I don't know what it ended in 2021, but we saw that e-commerce grew. Amazon was a big part of that. When I go back and look at predictions of how much of e-commerce Amazon will take over, a lot of people at this time were predicting 50%. So it hasn't quite risen to the level that people thought. It continues to grow. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's not hitting those, it's not going from 35 to 50% over 5 years?
You mean Amazon itself taking over the space?
Yeah, taking over the space of e-commerce. It's growing, but when I look back at projections, people are saying, "Oh yeah, by 2022, it's going to be 50%," and it's not quite there yet.
Yeah. I think some other things that are hindering it is just the logistics is hard. So there's lots of sellers that just can't get stock in, and that's definitely a thing. If a seller can't get stock in, there's no stock on Amazon. I think shoppers are being conditioned more and more to go outside of Amazon and be okay. there's plenty of just little people who, I wouldn't say little people, but smaller, more personal brands that have popped up, which is pretty interesting. And then I think another thing is that there's some very large brands, and then small brands in general, that recognize it's been much harder to grow themselves as a brand, which is really where you get that long-term leverage. Traditionally it was
Yeah.
next to impossible. I think Amazon definitely recognizes that. So you notice them making steps to correct that in, a way that's possible, that but still feels very native and very Amazon. Because of course they're not interested in diluting what they've built, but they're trying to be as accommodating as possible. But I think the platform itself only lends the ability to go so far with that. And so I think there's a lot of other brands that are kind of trying to build themselves off the platform. And that may also have factors.
I think that's smart because Amazon, if I've seen managing Amazon accounts and having sold myself, that your account can get suspended at any time for whatever reason, products can become suppressed, and you can get out of those things. You can get products relisted, you can get your account reinstated, but it can take some time and it can be very finicky. And so if your only revenue stream is volatile like that, it can cause some problems. And I believe that is one of the reasons why we saw a lot of growth in e-commerce, is because many brands were relying upon brick and mortar sales only, and they were thinking, we'll get to e-commerce, we'll get to our own Shopify store, we'll get to Amazon. And then when the pandemic hit, what happened? You had your designated person going to the store. People stocked up, and then they stayed at home, and then they purchased stuff on e-commerce. So omni-channel is really, this is a secret, but the retail reimagined for us on the longer game, it's really about how omni-channel is the future of e-commerce. And so I think it's smart to have your own channel first of all, and it's not necessarily because you own the consumer. People always talk about, we want to own the customer, and you can't own the customer on Amazon. Yeah, is it technically Amazon's customer? For sure. Can your brand have leverage with those customers on Amazon? Absolutely. Can you get retention from them? Absolutely. One of the reasons I say that is because almost everybody, like 300 million people, have social media accounts. So even if there's, 360 or however many million people there are in the US, maybe 330, somewhere in between there. So, some of the grandmas and grandpas don't have social media accounts, but where the real buying power is, most of those people have social media. So what are they going to do? They like your product. They're going to go look you up on Instagram. They're going to look you up on Facebook. They're going to maybe check you out on TikTok now too, which I'm curious how long will be a thing, but maybe someone will end up acquiring them. Just like Snapchat got really big for a while, and then it kind of dropped off,
Mm-hmm.
and it got bigger. But TikTok, what I've read, what's different about them from a social perspective is you don't have to watch ads. You can just keep scrolling. You can keep going. You don't have to. You're not forced to watch any ad content before you you move on to the next thing. But anyway, I think omnichannel is important. People are going to check you out on social media, and then you can leverage your site to get elsewhere. You're dealing specifically with Amazon advertising, and one of the things I've noticed over the past year is, you talked about levers, and there are some times where you can pull as many levers and push as many buttons as you want, but if the product is crap, or the product detail page, the actual listing that's on Amazon is crap, you are only going to get so far. So how do you determine who you take on, knowing that you're really good at pulling certain levers, but knowing that those levers can be limited sometimes?
Yeah, definitely. I think that goes back to us definitely focusing on partnering with people who are interested in building a brand. Those are my favorite partners, the people who know their products. I'm actually getting ready to do another onboarding call with someone I'm super excited to work with because he knows his products, he knows what he's doing, he knows where he's going, and he has a game plan. And those are the people that I'm like, yes, we can partner with you to bring that ad piece, but recognizing that we are just the ad piece. So we want people who can, definitely bring all of the
Yeah.
other aspects. Honestly, the scariest ones to work with are the brands that, we put this up 5 years ago, we haven't optimized their listings or done anything. Why are we not seeing the same returns? Why are we not continuously seeing
Yeah.
year-over-year growth?
Hmm.
And it's like, well, okay, so
I wonder
costs
why
have
that is.
risen. Like, even if your conversion rate stayed the same, even if all other things stayed equalized, which they don't, your ad costs are rising, and then that is going to factor into your now decreased performance metrics. And so, what we bring is the ad piece. We bring the ad knowledge, but we definitely need to partner with someone who's interested in, bringing all the other pieces to that.
I see three types of sellers on Amazon. Um, what do you think? What's your take on that? What are the different? If you had to put sellers on Amazon into certain categories, like brands are their own category. Brands who have legit stories. They're not molding their products to the marketplace. You're doing quite the opposite. You're saying, how do we make this work on the marketplace? What other kinds of sellers do you see out there?
Yeah, that's probably it. There's probably brands, and then there's the old school private labels, which I would most brands actually call themselves private label, but I think they're more into, like you said, building like an actual presence on Amazon, versus like the old school, I guess you would call it white labeling more than private label, where they just kind of slap their logo
Yeah,
on something, use factory images, and then just like call it good. The thing is, with the competition getting more and more fierce, and there being less and less places where you can really come in and absolutely differentiate yourself for the market, those people are just getting squeezed out. They're either learning to pivot and go the way of branding and like really dig into like who they are and adjust to the market, or they're saying
yeah,
Amazon doesn't work, I'm out, I'm gonna go find something else.
yeah. I love that one because Amazon definitely does work. $263 billion in the U.S. market in 2020, and I think I just looked it up recently, because our Cartology's website, my agency's website, we have facts on there about Amazon and about current stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so we had to update stuff because it's a new year, and 2021 I think was about 310 billion. So Amazon works, but you have to know what you're doing. So I always find that funny when someone just throws up their hands. Up, this doesn't work. It's like it's not quite like saying this, but it's like you try to jump up and dunk. I don't know why
Mm-hmm.
I'm using a sports analogy because I don't really know anything about sports, but you try to dunk and you're like, well, gravity doesn't work. It didn't help me get up there at all. It's like, oh, that's not really how it works. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk more about gravity. Let's get you back into seventh and eighth grade science and teach you about what Isaac Newton discovered and maybe how that's really actually applicable to your life. And maybe you're just not a good jumper. So maybe you weigh 500 pounds and trying to dunk a ball isn't going to make sense. But I think there's always there's something missing if you just say, oh, this doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not approaching it right for your brand. Maybe if your goal is to get on Amazon and become a seven-figure business right away, you're going to fail. And I mean, like probably 95% of the time, because in order to get and I always think about this too. I think you and I are friends, and I would consider us friends. Maybe you don't consider me a friend. I don't know.
I hope so.
But we we talk outside of this, and we have other agency friends, other service provider friends that we talk about, have groups that we communicate in, and we talk about the numbers game of hitting this certain number, from an advertising perspective, hitting, there's that metric for anyone who's not familiar with Amazon. You likely know ROAS, return on ad spend. So it's usually, if you're every time you spend $1, you get 2 back, you're getting a 2-to-1 ROAS. So the opposite of that metric, there's one on Amazon called ACOS, and that is advertising cost of sale. And that is basically the inverse. So if you're getting a 2-to-1 return on ads, you are you have a 50% ACOS. And so a lot of people look at ACOS and they say, oh, we need to get it down at this level. We need to, have it be at a certain level. And my question is always just why? Why do you need it to be that way? But if you we're looking when we look at numbers, sometimes it's like, well, why do you want to hit $1 million? It's just a mental breakthrough number. If you're aware of that and you're like, that's what you're going after, okay, well, cool. But if you're like, oh, well, we need to hit 7 figures so we can grow, and it's like, well, what if you hit 6 figures this year, but you're really profitable? Would that be different? And so there's always this numbers chasing game of even service providers saying, I only work with 7 or 8 figure brands. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Are they more successful? Are their stories better? Like, what is that? I mean, I don't know. What's your take on the whole numbers
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think numbers inform you, but I think there's this like opposing forces in a lot of ways on what someone wants to do and what the market will allow. And so you kind of have
Mm.
to the market's gonna want to suck everything out. I mean, Amazon is definitely growing their ad platform. It's getting much more competitive. So if you go in there like, I just need to rank, I need to get this, you're gonna spend a lot for that. So you really have to,
Mm-hmm.
you're always trying to push it towards profitability or some sort of upside, be that ranking or profits. There again, I'm a firm believer, and there always is some upside. We don't run ads just to like, we run ads. We've got everything built out. Isn't this amazing? And you're like, well, I'm losing money hand over fist. So no, it's not amazing. Like we need to
Yeah.
bring that back. I actually have some internal training I've been building out, and one of the things is like telling everyone on my team like we're not actually running ads just to like run ads. We're running ads because there's a distinct purpose and reason in mind, and we need to always keep that at the forefront. Again, be it profitability, be it eventual ranking, increased sales. The one thing that is very unique about the Amazon platform is there still is some sort of ranking influence generated through a paid ad. Used to be that way on Google. They definitely took it
Break
away
that down a little
because
bit more for people.
yes, so it's possible when you get a purchase of your product through an ad to have that purchase kind of accumulate in like your conversions or order history on that individual search page. So it kind of like adds to the pot in a way. So if you can, I wouldn't say
Gotcha.
artificially increase because they are still legit purchases. It's not like you're putting them up there and like
Mm-hmm.
somehow magically they're selling. Like actual people are buying the products. Amazon takes that into account and kind of says, okay, cumulatively ads as well as just, where you're organically showing up or where you naturally show up on that page, and then people who purchase through that avenue. Altogether, we see, this is kind of your sales velocity or how many you're selling versus your competitors. And so if you can artificially again, this not technically artificial, but you can pay
Yeah.
to influence that through the ads. It used to be Google, like you could just pay for
Well,
AdWords
yeah,
and then
that's
it
exactly what it
ranked.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about, I feel like, sales history, sales
Mm-hmm.
velocity. So
For sure.
when you're advertising on Amazon, it's a native platform. So you're advertising the listing that would show up organically in search. And so it doesn't really matter if you get a sale on the paid or the organic listing. Either way, when Amazon sees a keyword and a listing get purchased with that keyword, there's something called attribution that happens, and Amazon says, "Oh wow, cool neck towel. This product, I don't know if you remember, but like 6 years ago, those were super hot.
Yes.
The cooling neck towels, and a lot of people were selling them on Amazon too. And if someone purchases your product on cooling neck towel and it's on the ad listing,
Mhm.
that's still the exact same listing as the organic one. So you're going to get that attribution. It's going to help increase your rank, to your point, and it's going to help boost your visibility overall.
Mhm. Yeah. The thing, like I said, kind of the opposing forces is for you to show up on a particular spot on a particular search page is going to cost you X amount of dollars. That's actually determined by the market. That's not what you're
Yeah.
willing to pay. That's what now people will say, all right, so I need to reduce my costs, so I'm going to lower my bids. You're still going to show up lower. Like you'll still show up, you still possibly could get some sales, but that doesn't mean there's no like I've talked to so many people recently, like, how do you build out a ranking campaign? Like, it's not rocket science. As much as I want you to think that, like, I have the best campaign strategy and like use my super secret
Yeah.
formula and like, the world's your oyster. It's no, it's you need to bid high enough to gain that visibility, probably in a more targeted build. So there's ways to do it better,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no like secret sauce. To me, the trick is not necessarily how you
Oh,
build it
thank
out.
you. I say that all the time.
Yes.
I say that all the time. There's no secret sauce, and people don't like hearing that. And I would say maybe even service providers who are trying to get people to believe they have secret sauce like it less than the prospects out there, the potential clients who hear that. I think they're a little bit more okay with hearing that, because then that makes them feel like, okay, well, now I'm getting the reality, because a lot of people want you to feel like what they're doing is super super special. And bottom line, even if you tell someone, Elizabeth, even if you went to someone and said, here's exactly how you do everything I do, that doesn't mean that they're going to want to do it. That doesn't mean that they're going to be good at doing it. That doesn't mean that they're going to retain the information. And so they're still going to want you
Mhm.
likely to run their ads for them. They're just going to maybe understand it more. There's always going to be people that want other people to do things for them. I'm not good at it at accounting, and so I have someone else. I mean, I've learned because
Mhm.
I'm a business owner, and I had to figure it out. But I have someone that does my books, and I have an accountant. I have those people that do that because I don't want to handle that. I want to do what's best in my business, and that's building relationships with people, building out strategies on Amazon, all that kind of stuff. So I think the one thing that people are afraid to say, that you and I have talked about, off of this off of this podcast, is that ads are very experimental.
Mhm. Yeah. I think the trick for me, like if someone comes to me and says like we need to rank this product here. I'm actually gonna have a couple questions. One, what's your risk tolerance? How much money do you have just to like
Hmm.
flush if this doesn't work? How long are you fine with sustaining that? And how aggressive do we need to be out of the gate? If you've got a low budget, if you have a very low risk tolerance, I'm going to say we can't go after top keywords. It will not work. You will not be happy.
Right.
It's going to take a lot longer than you think. It's probably going to take double than you think. And you just can't sustain that. And you have to be okay with that. But that goes back to actually understanding how it works, understanding that it's a test thing. So I think where what we bring to the table in ranking is not necessarily how you can build it, because I can tell you how to build it. It's being able to
Yeah.
understand the market, and just because we're in it all the time, we can pace a little bit
Hmm.
more strategic bets and help kind of marry what you're comfortable with what we see the market requires, and then try and find that sweet spot, to kind of push into the market. And ideally, and then we know how to make adjustments or time frames to work on correcting it.
Yeah, and like you said, we're in it all the time, so we're able to make. I think I'm watching someone make a Whole Foods delivery to my front door. That's why I looked away for a second. um, when I think about being in it all the time, we're able to make more, I would say, educated guesses. And
Mm,
part of the reason is, as a service provider, you're working across multiple accounts. That's one of the benefits you have, as opposed to building something internally as a brand. You don't have access to other brands' data, and everything still remains private, but we can see, okay, across the board, we're seeing cost per click go up. So we know that that's likely. Hey, we want to warn you ahead of time. That's something you could deal with. It's the same with like, hey, I'm noticing that I can't access this account. Seller Central is down. Is anybody else on the team having that
Mm-hmm.
problem? And then 3 people on my team will say, yeah, I'm having a problem too. And then an hour later, Amazon says, hey, we're having problems with
Mm-hmm.
the campaign manager or the ads dashboard. We know about it and we're working on it. So it's that multiple people, multiple. This is a time where multiple cooks in the kitchen, maybe in different spots of the
Yeah.
kitchen. You've got your sous chef, you've got your pastry chef, you've got your head chef. I think
One
you'd be more of a
other
head chef kind of person,
one other
creating the
cool
recipes.
thing to point out is actually, so Amazon is giving us more access to data that we didn't have before. And that kind of goes back to more cooks in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
more people scrubbing all over trying to figure out new buttons, new things. But there is a brand, and I'm going to completely forget what exactly the word is. But if you go into Campaign Manager, left-hand side, scroll over the little icons, it's going to say brand, I think brand metrics. You actually can now
Okay.
see your conversion rate versus the conversion rate of the average in a specific category. And that will be aggregated by brand. So if you have more than one brand, you can check it by brand. If you are advertising, so you're not going to get it on a per product level, you will get it on a brand and a category level. So that can be very beneficial
And
now.
that's huge. That was not
Yes.
there before.
Yeah. Yeah, because so many people would say, well, how am I doing versus my competitors? I'm like, well, we don't take on competing clients, so I don't know. But, our
Right.
observations are typically conversion rates X. Now we can go in there and say, hey, look at this subcategory that you're really aggressive in. Us versus your competitors, you're lower than the average. And what we've seen is if you're lower than the average, you have a much harder time getting ranking, visibility, increased sales for your products. If you can get above that average, then we've seen a definite lift.
Well, and now on the campaign manager, so for everyone who's not super familiar with Amazon, there's that internal advertising platform. Everything's done inside what's called campaign manager, or really now just the Amazon advertising platform.
Yeah.
It's funny when people refer to it uh, as older names because it's been changed for a while, but Amazon now is giving you information like percent of impression share or percent of top of the page impression share, new to brand orders, all these different numbers that Amazon's had. They've had all this
Mm-hmm.
information and this data. They just been, I think, strategic about what they release and what they give to people because they don't want to over like the amount of data that Amazon
Yeah.
has. If they were to release it all right now, it would take us years to figure out how to implement that in our even the biggest of companies. It would take a lot of time to figure out how to implement that and utilize that because there's just so much that's out there. So looking at the ad console 3 years ago compared to now
Oh yeah.
is drastically different. Looking at it 6 months ago, yeah, there's definitely some changes and some difference, especially aesthetic stuff. But it's changed dramatically, and so now we've got more opportunities to say, hey, we think this is a good decision to go this way. Let's try it. And then look back, over the last 3 days and say, what was number, like you said, let's start with,
Mm-hmm.
intent in mind, or I think it was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of the Highly Effectual People. I messed up
Mm.
that title.
I haven't read
But I
with
think
it
one of
in a
them is
while.
one of the habits. Yeah. It's start with the end in mind. I just saw someone mention this. So what is your goal?
Mm-hmm.
Is it to get more visibility? Because if that's the case, we're not necessarily going to be judging conversions. If it's to get more sales, then conversions is going to be a part of it. And then if we're looking at profitability, it's not just going to be conversions, but it's going to be your ROAS. So
Mm-hmm.
what your goal is will determine what metrics you look at.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And I think what we're seeing now is Amazon and then also the really savvy sellers now viewing the Amazon ad platform more in a traditional marketing sense, where so the thing that's very unique about Amazon advertising is the fact that you can absolutely identify what converted and what were as before, you would pixel things or you would try and aggregate it, but it was very difficult to correlate a conversion to a marketing. So at that point, it's just viewed as marketing or branding, where a lot of
Yeah.
like old school Amazon sellers are very much conditioned to say like ACOS is everything. Like, what is my conversion on this? I have to be absolutely profitable or it makes no sense. Where if you're coming from a traditional marketing background, that's not always the case. And so I think as the platform matures, you're going to see many more people talk about, Amazon marketing, less like Amazon pay per click, and like really hone in on like the old school ACOS focus.
People are gonna start to go back to that. You mean as opposed to just looking at it as traditional marketing, like media buying, where you're just throwing out a bunch of money and hoping for exposure.
So I think you definitely we're going to be more savvy with our media buying. I think that makes sense. But as bigger and bigger brands get onto the platform and they're looking to how do I gain market share, they realize that there's a lot of upfront costs involved, which don't necessarily always translate day one, but out of the long term, you definitely can see that lift. And again, new to brand metrics, there's ways for us to kind of get actual data feedback on how that's working. But so I think a lot of people who are so hyper focused on ACOS will probably end up getting lost in the fray.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's smart, and I think the one of the biggest questions I always have is why, and I think this annoyed teachers when I would ask them this as a kid. Well, we're going to do this today. Why are we doing this? Well, because we need to learn about our state. Why do we need to learn about our state? Well, I don't know. The Board of Education requires us to learn about our state in fourth grade. But why do they do that? It's like, shut up already. I'm just trying to teach these kids. Why do you keep saying why? And the I get the best and most interesting answers from people, and this helps me to better determine who I even want to work with. Is when I ask a question like why, your answer is very telling. So if you say, "Hey, right now I have a 10-to-1 ROAS on ads, and I want to grow aggressively," and I say, "Well, why do you have a 10-to-1 ROAS?" Well, because we're very efficient. We're a startup, and we don't have the money to to get less of a return. I'm like, okay, great. But one of your new goals now is you want to grow aggressively. So I said, what if I told you we could grow you significantly, but your ROAS would drop to a 5-to-1, which in my mind is still pretty incredible. And this is an actual call I have with a prospect, and they said not interested. And I said, okay, well, then basically what you're looking for is impossible, because you're wanting your ROAS to not change, even though you're looking for greater exposure, which means you're going to have a higher risk tolerance, like you mentioned, because as you get exposed to more people, not everyone's going to be your ideal customer. And there's a piece of education for us as service providers when we go and talk to our clients or prospects that say, this is how Amazon works. We have to educate them, so that not because we're so smart and incredible, but because we work with the platform and we want them to know, here's how Amazon works, and here's the kind of decisions we're going to make, and here's why we're going to make them. But same from a consumer's perspective, it might take time for you to educate someone on why your product is more important, why it has unique characteristics as opposed to just points of parity. We're even doing deeper creative audits on our clients and saying, what are your points of differentiation? What are your points of parity in the marketplace? Because if everyone in the marketplace is doing this thing, like having cool styles and colors, and that's your point of difference, it's really a point of parity, and that's not something that's going to help you.
Yeah,
I think point of parity would be a great band name too.
it would
So
be.
if you play guitar or anything, I
I
think we
don't.
we
I
should start
don't.
a band
My
called
siblings all do.
Points
They're
of
all like
Parity. There was
super
what
musical.
was the
I missed the boat.
oh really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, you can teach drums. Anybody can learn drums.
There you go. My brother's already the drummer.
I
He's
learned drums. You can
amazing.
learn drums.
Absolutely amazing. He kills it.
Oh, okay. Does he play? Does he play? Oh, oops. Does he play places regularly? Like, is that what he does even professionally, or is
Not
he? Does he?
regularly.
Maybe just like
No,
okay.
but he's good.
There's a lot of great musicians who have other jobs but play like I play at church sometimes, or I'll write and record music and stuff like that. But I don't get paid for it. So you heard it here first. If you want a drummer, Elizabeth's brother and myself, we're happy to
There you go.
play for cash. Elizabeth, if people want to locate you or find you, where should they be looking? Should they be looking in the Amazon jungle? Should they be looking at the in the swamps of Florida? Where are they going to find you
Yes. I'm relocating to the swamps. I'm going to be a swamp person.
if they want to connect with you?
No, if you want to just snoop on what I'm doing, what I'm thinking about Amazon advertising, definitely go follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm the most active, drop the most tips. If you're interested in working with us, though, the best place is going to be the website, which is jungler, JUNGLR.com. Form at the bottom. I'm still doing the intake, so you'll get to talk to me and we'll see if we can help.
And it's Elizabeth Green, everyone.
Yes,
Greene. So there's an E on the end.
there is.
I love that you're doing intake. I still do. I'm the salesperson for my team, so we get to say, like basically you get to talk with the chief ID officer, you get to talk with the head person, and I think that provides a level of credibility that people like. And it's fun. You get to people get to pick your brain a little bit, and you get to find out, hey, here's what's going to be going down the pipeline in my company. So, Elizabeth, if you had one piece of advice, and this is never fun because then you have to decide between things, but it puts a little pressure on you. If you had to pick one thing that you would tell people about advertising on Amazon, someone who's already advertising, who's wanting to hit a certain goal, and they're wanting to be successful, which is going to be determined differently by every person. What's one piece of advice you would give them?
I would say know your numbers. That's going to be the biggest one. Really understanding, know your numbers, caveat, not all keywords and targets are created equal, and be okay with that. I think the biggest issue I have now with like
Okay.
the AI and the automation is that they treat everything equal. And I don't think that's how you get the best results.
Yep. And honestly, the quote unquote AI that's out there, it's only and we're talking about advertising softwares, technology. It's only so advanced. It's not Isaac Asimov's iRobot. Like, someone is not going to come after you or Ex Machina or whatever. Where that, I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but there's a female robot who let's just say she becomes I think the word is sentient. She becomes aware. And so, that's not what bid automation is happening right now on Amazon platforms. But so advice is know your metrics. Caveat: not all keywords are created the same.
Yep.
Thanks for coming on, Elizabeth. We appreciate your wisdom and your brevity when it comes to, or levity, I should say, when it comes to ads and the whole game.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
So, guys, if you want to find Elizabeth, again, go to LinkedIn. It's Green with an E at the end, and Jungler JUNGLR.com is the website. Fill out that form, and you can talk directly with Elizabeth. This has been The Longer Game, where we talk about retail reimagine. We talk about the longer game. We talk about the longest game. We talk about playing in retail and what it's going to look like in the future. And I think Amazon's definitely going to have a big part of it. Stay tuned for what that percentage actually turns out to be. But thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later. Thank you for listening to The Longer Game. We genuinely appreciate your time. And if you want to connect with us, please reach out to thelongergame.com. You can fill out a contact request form there. You can also find us on majority of the social media platforms, except for Twitter. That's the only one that we're not really on. This show is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We're helping brands accelerate growth and become profitable on Amazon. If you'd like to know more, go to thinkcartology.com, fill out a contact form, and we'll get on the phone. That's what it's all about, connecting with you and building a relationship. This show is also brought to you by ArchDevOps. They are the ones that are helping make all the logistics of this podcast happen. We are so thankful for them. If you want to get your podcast up and running and you want to automate as many things as possible, go to archdevops.com. That's ArchDevops.com and reach out to them. They can be super, super helpful. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day and be blessed.